back, everybody. Welcome back. My next guest is widely regarded as the nation's leading expert on violence and terrorism. He's got a book, Fearless, which is currently in stores. Please welcome Gavin de Becker, everybody. Gavin de Becker. Gavin.
They stand up for everybody?
They stand up for everybody. Well, they stand up if you're an expert on terrorism. They're not quite sure which side you're on yet, but once they know, they'll be fine. No, I have actually read your book. I read the book you wrote before this, The Gift of Fear. And I have read this, Fearless, which is the truth about risk, safety and security in a time of terrorism. What do you think of the way we're doing it right now? Are we doing the right thing with the, no liquid on the planes, no shampoo?
No, we're doing a lot of the wrong things.
Really? Why?
Yeah. Some, I think that, airline security is an important topic. It was before 9/11. There had been plenty of other incidents where people tried to fly airplanes into things. And the government knew that and chose to do, rather than strengthening the cockpit doors, which is the important procedure, chose to do airline screening. Which politically, we all feel it, where the government's doing something, and governments throughout history like to be the way that you are spared from death. They want to tell you only we can save you from being killed.
Right, okay. So if you vote for us, we'll spare you from death.
Yeah, and they don't. They just move it around. If you put more police patrols here, you have more crime over here. It just moves around.
What about you mentioned the strengthening of the cockpit doors, right? Now, every time I'm on a plane, the door is locked, the pilots are in there, they got a little peephole and everything's, But then about halfway through the flight, nearly every flight you're on, they open the door, a pilot comes out and takes a whiz, or they have they take in the
tray
bacon
of coffee
sandwiches and stuff like that, and
that is actually the biggest problem right now in airline security.
That really is?
You have hit the #1 problem, because by making the cockpits entry resistant, which every taxi cab in New York City was before 9/11, and of course every if you've gone a subway, it's entry resistant to get into the cockpit. But by doing that, the government has correctly resolved the biggest problem, which is to stop people from getting into the cockpit. But a taxi driver, alone at night at 2 in the morning in New York City, does not stop every 3 blocks and get in the back with you. And so
I know a couple of guys who actually will do that.
And you're out at 2 in the morning, so you're finding them.
You can find them. Yeah, you're going to pay a little extra, but you're going to.
But to open the cockpit door, one of my recommendations in this book is to stop all meal service into the cockpit. You either pre-stock the cockpit, which is easy,
sandwiches,
sandwiches are just fine, or you have a pass-through door. But to open the door during the flight, and then to do it, it would be a small door that opens like you have in a prison cell.
Hey, you want your food left?
Exactly. But to open the door is to defeat the entire purpose of the door, and it doesn't happen just once during a flight. It happens 6 or 7 times, and in fact, the flight attendants who visit the cockpit a lot. You want some coffee, you want some tea, you want some sandwiches, are the ones that are most popular. So you always have them going up and knocking on the door, and the bad part is, now if someone gets into the cockpit, the cockpit door is entry resistant. So the rest of us, who really are the heroes of the incidents that happened after 9/11, there were many incidents after 9/11 with people trying to get into the cockpit,
I remember,
all stopped because the passengers now have been trained by the best training film in the history of the world, which is the events that we saw at the World Trade Center.
That's right. So, if someone, tries to hijack a plane now, everyone would say no. But if the cockpit door is locked and the guys get in there, then you've got some
That's the problem. That's correct. So you've identified something.
But what if the pilot needs a pee-pee, though? I mean, in some of these flights, you're doing coast to coast 5 hours. I mean, these pilots are, big tough guys, but you got to go when you got to go.
Maybe bladder training is the important
Bladder training?
Yeah, I think so. No. Truthfully, the pilot leaving the cockpit is not as serious a problem as when the flight attendant goes and opens the door. She knocks on the door. We who were sitting in the front of the plane see that happen, and now can get up and go into the cockpit. The pilot leaving the door can do so by looking through first and see. And newer planes also can be built, as they are being done now in Israel, with the cockpit to include a bathroom, which is by far the best solution.
And what would you say is the biggest threat to the United States today, then? If not, pilots going to the bathroom?
Probably turning our own precautions against us in the way that the governments do. Throughout history, terrorism has existed, so that is a given. Violence has always existed. It's the only way to deal with very powerful governments. The only option that you have if you're an adversary is terrorism. That's always existed. And always throughout history, the precautions we take are vastly more damaging than the incidents themselves. We've got an incident in 9/11 that is the only time in 230 years that Americans have had a profound transnational terrorist incident on our soil. So for something that happens once every 230 years, we have literally turned the country upside down. so that now the population buys into all variety of precautions. Our mail is read, email can be read, habeas corpus has been let go of. Things that if bin Laden had said, do this, if he had said, I want you to do this or I'll put bombs around, I want you to give up habeas corpus, I want you to give up all kinds of freedoms and rights.
Can you explain what you mean by habeas corpus?
Which is the right not to be able to petition the government to not be held against your will.
Right.
So, for example, those 600 people and ultimately the 3,500 people who were held without attorneys in the aftermath of 9/11 didn't have their habeas corpus rights met.
Right.
If a terrorist had asked us to do that, we would have said no way.
Right.
But we, in fact, did it to ourselves. So I'm answering your question, what's the greatest danger? It is that the reactions to terrorism are invariably more potent, powerful, and devastating than the terrorism itself. Terrorism.
So what should we be doing then? What precautions should we take? What can the average American who's traveling on an airline or moving around? I mean, because you talk a lot of that in the previous book and this about what individuals should and would actually do. What would you recommend?
Well, I do recommend many of the things that we have done. I recommend entry-resistant cockpits on airplanes. Right. I don't recommend taking away of all the little liquids and putting them in plastic and taking off your shoes and standing on one foot and all of the lines and all of the things that have been done to make air travel profoundly unpleasant, but profoundly nice for government, because governments love it when people will do exactly what you tell them at every second.
But what possible advantage would any government get over, taking people's shoes off in an airport? It's not like, oh, haha, now their shoes are off, we can snatch power.
You know what I mean? You know what's funny? I think it's exactly like, aha.
Really?
Yes, I do, because, aha, now they'll do anything in the world because they're afraid.
Oh, I see what you mean. So you use the fear.
Exactly.
Who was it, FDR that said that?
He said nothing to fear but fear itself. But governments throughout history, this is what I'm pointing out is not about the Bush administration, it's about every government in world history has used fear for political goals.
Wasn't it that Caesar said, beware the leader who bangs the drum and speaks of war, because he will take the country from you. I know because I have done this and I am Caesar.
Very true. So you know all this stuff.
I know. I'm interested in that. We have to take a break and we'll come right back. We'll be right back with Gavin de Becker, everybody.
Okay.